I paid for my entire family's dream vacation, but when I got there, I found out my sister told everyone I got the tickets for free, so I canceled the return flights and watched her explain who was really paying. The trip was supposed to fix everything. I'd worked doubles at the hospital for 18 months, lived on ramen, and saved $9,200 to take my family to Costa Rica. My parents never had a real vacation. My sister constantly posted about how boring our family was compared to her friends' families who traveled. When I sent the itinerary, my sister called crying with gratitude. Mom sent me a voice message saying I was too generous. Dad texted 3 heart emojis, which for him was practically a novel. The resort was paradise. Endless beaches, infinity pools, activities included. On our second day, I was getting drinks when I overheard my aunt talking to strangers at the bar. My niece works for this airline, she said proudly. Got us all buddy passes, practically free except taxes. I stood there, frozen, holding 2 piña coladas. Buddy passes? I found my cousin later by the pool. So lucky your work gave you those companion tickets, she said. Wish my job had perks like that. That night, I confronted my sister on her balcony. Buddy passes? I said. You told them I got airline employee discounts? She wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't want everyone feeling guilty that you spent so much. So you lied and made it seem like this cost me nothing. Does it really matter? She asked. Everyone's happy. We're all here together. It matters because I worked 70-hour weeks. It matters because this was every dollar I saved. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. No one cares who paid what. But they did care. At dinner, my uncle kept talking about how amazing employee benefits were these days. How I should see if I could get more buddy passes for Christmas. My cousin asked if I could get her discounted flights to Europe. My sister smiled through every comment, never corrected anyone. I went back to my room and opened my laptop, found the flight reservations, canceled every return ticket except mine. The fees were brutal, but I'd already paid for the insult of having 18 months of sacrifice erased. 3 days later, my sister burst into my room at breakfast time. The airline app says our tickets don't exist. That's strange, I said, not looking up from my coffee. I called them. They said someone canceled everything, probably a computer error. Her face went pale as understanding hit. You didn't. I did. Since everyone thinks these tickets were free employee perks, I figured actual money wouldn't matter. Are you serious right now? Completely. If you want to get home, book your own flight. Last-minute tickets are running about $900 each. I don't have $900. Then I guess you'll need to explain to everyone who actually paid for this vacation. She tried bargaining, then threatening, then crying. I packed my bag while she spiraled. By lunch, the entire family knew. They gathered in the lobby, looking at their phones in panic. My sister had told them everything, trying to paint me as vindictive. But my dad asked the question that mattered. Did you really tell everyone your sister got these tickets for free? My sister stammered. I thought, you thought erasing my sacrifice was easier than admitting I did something generous, I said. The shame on my parents' faces was almost worse than my sister's lies. My uncle started calculating credit card limits. My aunt was crying. My cousin kept apologizing for the Europe comment. I grabbed my suitcase. I'm leaving on my original flight. The rest of you figure it out. My sister blocked the door. Please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'll tell everyone the truth. You already should have. I pushed past her. At the airport, my phone exploded with messages. Most were from my parents, frantically trying to book last-minute flights they couldn't afford. One was from my sister, begging. Then a call from an unknown number. Resort security. We need you to return immediately. A guest has filed a fraud report claiming you used her credit card information without authorization. Local police are involved. My sister's voice in the background, explaining something to officers. My hand tightened around my phone. I'm sorry, what? Miss, your sister has filed a report claiming you accessed her credit card without permission to book flights. The charges were significant. Costa Rican authorities take financial crimes very seriously. I felt my blood pressure spike. That's completely false. You'll need to return to the resort to provide a statement. If you board that plane, it could be considered fleeing jurisdiction. My sister's manipulation had reached a new low. She was trying to criminalize me for her lies. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said through gritted teeth. The cab ride back felt longer than the flight from home. I used the time to pull up every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of documentation proving I'd paid for everything with my own money. When I walked into the resort security office, I found my sister sitting with 2 police officers, dabbing her eyes with tissue. She looked up when I entered, and for a split second, I saw calculation flash across her face before she resumed her tearful victim act. Officers, I said calmly, I'm happy to cooperate fully. But first, I'd like to understand exactly what I'm being accused of. The taller officer consulted his notepad. Your sister claims you used her credit card information to purchase airline tickets totaling $9,200 without her knowledge or consent. That's interesting, I said, opening my laptop, because I paid for those tickets with my own card, from my own account, 6 months ago. I turned the screen to show them my bank statements, highlighting the transaction, the date, the amount, my name on the account. The officer's expression shifted. These appear to be your personal funds, he said slowly. They are. Every cent came from my savings. I worked overtime for 18 months to afford this trip. Then why would your sister file this report? The second officer asked. My sister jumped in. She canceled all our return flights. She stranded us here. The tickets I paid for, I clarified, with my money, which makes them my property to cancel if I choose. You can't just leave people in another country, my sister shrieked. You're adults with credit cards and functioning brains, I replied. You can book your own flights home. The first officer held up his hand. Let me understand this. You purchased tickets for your family as a gift. Your sister misrepresented how the tickets were obtained. When you discovered her deception, you canceled the return portions of tickets that you paid for. Exactly. He turned to my sister. Do you have any evidence that she used your credit card? My sister's mouth opened and closed. Well, no, but did you give her permission to use your card at any point? No, because I didn't. I mean, she must have. So you filed a false police report, the officer said flatly. The color drained from my sister's face. I didn't mean to file a false report. She backtracked frantically. I just thought maybe she'd used my information somehow. I was confused. The stress of being stranded? Filing a false report is a criminal offense, the second officer stated, particularly when it involves allegations of fraud and theft. Wait, no, my sister said, standing abruptly. I made a mistake. Can't I just withdraw the report? You wasted police resources, the first officer said. Pulled us away from legitimate cases. That has consequences. I watched my sister's panic escalate. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt exhausted. Officers, I said quietly, would it be possible to speak with my sister privately for a moment? They exchanged glances, then nodded. We'll be right outside. Once the door closed, my sister whirled on me. You have to tell them this was all a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. You filed a false report to try to manipulate me into restoring your flights. I panicked, okay? Everyone's furious at me. Mom won't even look at me. Dad keeps asking how I could be so ungrateful. I just needed them to stop. By making me the criminal? She slumped into her chair. I messed up. I know I messed up. You've been messing up since the moment you told everyone those tickets were free. I thought I was helping, she said weakly. No, you thought you were avoiding feeling inferior. You couldn't stand that your younger sister did something generous that you couldn't do yourself. The truth hung between us. Please, she whispered. Don't let them charge me. I'll tell everyone what really happened. I'll apologize. I'll pay you back somehow. I studied her face, saw genuine fear there, mixed with shame. You should have thought about consequences before you lied, I said. Before you let Uncle talk about buddy passes. Before you filed a false police report. I know. I walked to the door, then paused. I'll tell the officers I don't wish to press additional charges. But you're fixing this mess yourself. Book your own flight home. Apologize to everyone. And never ever claim credit for something I did again. I promise, she said, voice breaking. I stepped outside and approached the officers. I don't want to pursue charges related to the false report. My sister made a mistake out of desperation. I think the situation has been stressful enough for everyone involved. The first officer nodded slowly. That's generous of you, but we'll still need to document that a false report was filed. She'll receive a formal warning. I understand. You're free to catch your flight, the second officer said. We have everything we need from you. I thanked them and headed back to the taxi area. My phone buzzed continuously during the ride to the airport. Mom begging me to help them book flights. Dad saying we needed to talk as a family. My aunt leaving a tearful voicemail about how sorry she was. I responded to only one message. Mom's. I'm catching my flight. You all need to handle your own arrangements. When I get home, we can discuss what happens next. At the airport, I settled into my seat, declining the flight attendant's offer of champagne. I was too exhausted to celebrate. The passenger next to me, a woman in her 60s, noticed my expression. Rough vacation? You could say that? Family drama? I laughed without humor. Is there any other kind? I've been flying to Costa Rica for 30 years, she said. Every trip, I leave my family at home. Best decision I ever made. We flew in comfortable silence after that. I dozed fitfully, waking as we descended into familiar territory. My apartment had never looked better. I dropped my bags and collapsed on the couch, finally allowing myself to process everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. We made it home. Your mother and I paid for your sister's ticket. Your aunt and uncle used credit cards for theirs. Your cousin is still trying to figure something out. Then, another message. We need to talk about what happened. I stared at those words. We need to talk, as if this were some minor misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with a conversation. I typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, I'm not ready yet. For 3 days, I ignored calls and texts from everyone except my best friend Riley, who brought wine and listened to the whole story without interrupting once. So your sister basically committed credit fraud against the police, Riley said finally. That's impressively stupid. She was desperate. She was manipulative. There's a difference. Riley had a point. Desperation didn't excuse lying to police officers. What are you going to do? Riley asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to never speak to any of them again. Part of me knows that's not realistic. You could at least make them sweat a little longer. On day 4, I finally answered when Mom called. Thank God, she breathed. I've been so worried. I'm fine. We need to talk about Costa Rica. We really don't. Your sister feels terrible about what she did. She should. Mom sighed. I know you're angry. You have every right to be, but she's your sister. She made a mistake. She made multiple calculated decisions, I corrected. She lied about where the tickets came from. She let that lie spread and grow. She watched me be humiliated. Then she tried to have me arrested. She wasn't thinking clearly. Stop making excuses for her. Silence on the other end. I worked 18 months for that vacation, I said quietly. 70-hour weeks. I ate ramen so I could save every extra dollar. I wanted to do something nice for all of you, and we're so grateful. Are you? Because being grateful would mean acknowledging what I did. It would mean correcting lies when you heard them. It would mean supporting me when everything fell apart. We didn't know what to do, Mom admitted. You could have asked me. You could have believed me. Instead, you watched your daughter file a false police report against me. We thought she was just panicking. I'm hanging up now, I said. When you're ready to actually hold her accountable instead of explaining away her behavior, we can talk again. I ended the call and immediately blocked my sister's number. I couldn't handle her apologies or excuses. Work became my sanctuary. The hospital emergency room was chaotic and demanding, which meant I didn't have time to think about family drama. My coworkers noticed my extra shifts but didn't comment. 2 weeks after returning from Costa Rica, I arrived home to find my sister sitting on my apartment steps. "How did you get this address?" I asked. "Mom gave it to me. Please, I just need 5 minutes." "You don't get to show up at my home uninvited." "I know, but you won't answer my calls or texts." I needed to apologize in person. I considered going inside and shutting the door in her face. Instead, I sat down on the step next to her, maintaining careful distance. "You have 5 minutes." She took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that's not enough, but I mean it. What I did was unforgivable." "Then why are you asking for forgiveness?" "Because you're my sister. Because I messed up the most generous thing anyone's ever done for our family. Because I let my own insecurity turn me into someone I hate." "What insecurity?" She laughed bitterly. "Are you serious? You're the responsible one, the successful one, the one who saves lives and works 70-hour weeks and still manages to drop $9,000 on a vacation. Meanwhile, I'm barely keeping my head above water financially. So you decided to tear me down. I decided to make it seem like you hadn't done anything special, like it was just some work perk that fell in your lap. Because if it was easy for you, then I didn't have to feel so inadequate." At least she was being honest. "That's some twisted logic," I said. "I know. And then when you canceled the flights, I panicked. Everyone was looking at me like I'd ruined everything. So I tried to shift blame back to you. Make it seem like you were the one being unreasonable. By accusing me of credit card fraud." She winced. "I wasn't thinking. I just needed them to stop being angry at me. So you tried to get me arrested in a foreign country. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you were willing to destroy my life to avoid accountability." She started crying. Not the manipulative tears from the resort, but genuine sobs that shook her shoulders. "I hate myself for what I did. I've barely slept. Every time I close my eyes, I see your face at the resort. How betrayed you looked." I sat with her pain for a moment, not to comfort her, but to witness it. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally. "I understand, but I appreciate you acknowledging what you did." She wiped her eyes. "For what it's worth, I've been in therapy, trying to figure out why I do this kind of thing." "What kind of thing?" "Sabotage relationships. Tear down people I love when they succeed. My therapist says it's about self-worth. Your self-worth isn't my responsibility to manage." "I know. That's what I'm trying to work on." We sat in silence as the sun set behind the buildings. "I'm not ready to have you in my life right now," I said. "Maybe someday, but not now." She nodded, standing slowly. "I'll leave you alone." But I meant what I said about the apology, and about trying to be better. I watched her walk away, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. That night, I finally responded to Mom's texts. "I saw my sister today. I appreciate that she apologized, but I need space from all of you right now. Please respect that." Mom's response came quickly. "How much space?" "I don't know. Weeks, maybe months. I'll reach out when I'm ready." "We love you." "I know. But love wasn't enough. Not when it came without accountability. Not when it excused harmful behavior for the sake of keeping peace." The months passed slowly. I threw myself into work, picked up hobbies I'd abandoned, reconnected with friends I'd neglected while saving for Costa Rica. Riley dragged me to pottery classes and hiking trips. "You seem lighter," she observed one Saturday morning over coffee. "I feel lighter." "No family guilt weighing you down?" "Surprisingly little." "Have they been respecting your boundaries?" "Mostly. Mom texts every few weeks to check in. Dad sent a card for my birthday. My sister leaves me alone, which I appreciate." "Think you'll ever reconnect?" I considered the question. "Maybe, on my terms, when I'm ready." "That's fair." 3 months after Costa Rica, I received an unexpected letter, handwritten, from my sister. "I'm not sending this to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that I've continued therapy. I've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, which doesn't excuse what I did, but helps explain some of my patterns. I'm working on building my own life instead of tearing down yours. I got a promotion at work. I'm paying back Mom and Dad for the flight they bought me. Small steps, but they feel important. I hope you're doing well. You deserve every good thing. Your sister." I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement that people could change. 4 months after Costa Rica, Dad called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, sweetie. I know you said you needed space, but I have something I need to say." "Okay. I failed you in Costa Rica. I failed you before that, too. I should have questioned your sister's story about the tickets. I should have protected you when everything fell apart. I should have believed you without hesitation." My throat tightened. "I've thought about it every day since we got back," he continued. "How we let you down. How we prioritized your sister's feelings over your sacrifice. I'm ashamed of myself." "Dad, let me finish. You worked yourself to exhaustion to give us something beautiful, and we threw it back in your face. Not intentionally, but through complacency, through not questioning, through choosing comfort over truth." I felt tears building. "I don't expect you to forgive us," he said, "but I needed you to know that I see what we did wrong, and I'm sorry." "Thank you," I whispered. "Take all the time you need. We'll be here when you're ready." After we hung up, I cried for the first time since leaving Costa Rica. Not angry tears or bitter tears, but cleansing ones. 6 months after Costa Rica, I agreed to have coffee with Mom. We met at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes. She looked older somehow, more tired. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "You're welcome. I've missed you." "I've missed you too." We ordered coffee and sat in awkward silence until Mom finally spoke. I've been replaying everything in my mind. All the times I should have stepped in, should have questioned the buddy pass story, Should have supported you instead of managing your sister's emotions. Why didn't you? She considered the question carefully. Your sister has always been more fragile, required more attention, more careful handling. Somewhere along the way, I started assuming you were fine because you were competent, because you handled things. I'm not always fine. I know that now. I took your strength for granted. Let your sister's neediness overshadow your needs. It felt like my feelings didn't matter, I admitted. Like keeping peace was more important than acknowledging what actually happened. Your feelings matter enormously. What happened to you in Costa Rica was cruel, and we made it worse by not standing up for you. I nodded, feeling some of the anger dissolve. I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, Mom said. But I can promise to try harder, to see you instead of just assuming you're okay, to believe you first. That's all I wanted. Can we try again? Slowly? I thought about it. About the cost of holding on to anger versus the cost of rebuilding. Slowly, I agree. Over the following months, I carefully reconstructed relationships with my parents. Dinners every few weeks, phone calls that felt genuine, boundaries that were respected. My sister and I remained distant. Not hostile, but not close. We'd exchange brief texts on holidays, acknowledge each other's existence without pretending everything was fine. 1 year after Costa Rica, I received a check in the mail, $9,200, from my sister. The note attached said simply, I can't undo what I did, but I can return what you spent. Thank you for the lesson in accountability. I stared at that check for a long time. Part of me wanted to tear it up, send it back, refuse her attempt at restitution. Instead, I deposited it and used it to book a solo trip to New Zealand, posted photos of mountains and glaciers and stunning coastlines. Lived exactly the adventure I wanted without worrying about anyone else's comfort or opinion. My sister liked every photo, never commented, just acknowledged my joy from a distance. 2 years after Costa Rica, I ran into my aunt at the grocery store. We hadn't spoken since the trip. I owe you an apology, she said immediately. You do. I should have questioned the buddy pass story. Should have thanked you properly for your generosity. Should have supported you when everything fell apart. Why didn't you? Because it was easier to believe the comfortable lie. Easier to enjoy the vacation without guilt. I'm ashamed of that now. I appreciate you saying that. Your sister told us what really happened, about how she manipulated the situation, how she tried to have you arrested. We had no idea it went that far. She finally told the truth? At Thanksgiving dinner last year, just laid it all out. Your uncle was furious with her, with himself for not seeing it sooner. How is my cousin doing? I asked, remembering her Europe comment. Embarrassed. She wanted to reach out but didn't know if you'd want to hear from her. She was just going along with what she was told. I don't blame her. My aunt's eyes teared up. You're kinder than we deserve. I'm not kind. I'm just tired of holding on to anger. 3 years after Costa Rica, my sister asked if we could meet for lunch. I agreed, curious about what she had to say after all this time. She looked different, healthier somehow, more settled in her own skin. Thank you for coming, she said. You said it was important. It is. I'm getting married. I felt surprised, and something else, maybe happiness for her. Congratulations. His name is Owen. He's a teacher, patient and kind and everything I'm not naturally. You're more than you give yourself credit for. She smiled sadly. I'm trying to be. Therapy helped. So did Owen. He doesn't let me get away with my old patterns. That's good. I'm not inviting you to the wedding. I raised my eyebrows. Not because I don't want you there, she clarified quickly, but because I don't want to pressure you. Don't want to force reconciliation before you're ready. Owen said I needed to respect your boundaries even if it hurts. Owen sounds smart. He is. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. For what it's worth, she said eventually. Costa Rica changed me, hitting rock bottom like that, seeing who I'd become. It forced me to either get better or stay miserable. I'm glad you chose better. I almost didn't, but Owen found me at my lowest point and saw potential instead of disaster. Everyone deserves that. Even you? I thought about it. About Riley and my parents' attempts at redemption. About strangers who'd been kind for no reason. Yeah, even me. 4 years after Costa Rica, I accepted an invitation to my sister's home for dinner. She'd insisted it was casual. Just her, Owen, and me. Their apartment was small but warm. Photos on the walls, plants in every corner, a cat that immediately demanded attention. Owen greeted me with genuine friendliness. No awkwardness, no apologetic explanations, just nice to finally meet you, and your sister talks about you constantly. Over dinner, I watched them interact. The way Owen gently corrected her when she started catastrophizing, how she laughed at his terrible jokes, the ease between them. This is nice, I said. It is, my sister agreed. Thank you for giving me this chance. Thank you for earning it. After Owen went to load the dishwasher, my sister turned to me seriously. I know we'll never be the sisters we should have been, but I'd like to be the sisters we can be, if you're willing. What does that look like? Honest, boundaried, real, no pretending we're close if we're not, no forcing traditions that don't fit, just two people who share history trying to be in each other's lives authentically. I can work with that. 5 years after Costa Rica, I planned another family vacation, smaller this time, just Mom, Dad, and me. We went to Maine, rented a cabin by the coast, spent our days hiking and eating lobster rolls and having conversations that actually meant something. One evening, sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Dad said, "This is what Costa Rica should have been." It's better, I corrected, because it's honest. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for showing up differently. That night, I thought about the 19-year-old version of myself who'd worked 70-hour weeks to create a perfect vacation. How desperately she'd wanted to bring everyone together. How crushed she'd been when it all fell apart. I wished I could tell her that the falling apart was necessary, that sometimes things have to break completely before they can be rebuilt into something stronger. 7 years after Costa Rica, my sister had a baby, a little girl named after our grandmother. When she asked if I'd be willing to be the godmother, I said yes. Not because everything was fixed, not because the past was forgotten, but because people deserved chances to be better. And my sister had taken hers. At the christening, surrounded by family who'd worked hard to heal their broken pieces, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not the false piece of pretending nothing happened, not the fragile piece of walking on eggshells, but the hard-won piece of people who'd hurt each other, held each other accountable, and chosen to keep trying. Riley found me after the ceremony. How are you feeling? Good. Really good. No regrets about Costa Rica? I thought about it. About the 18 months of saving, the humiliation at the resort, the canceled flights, the false police report, about all the pain that had followed. No regrets, I said finally. It taught me that my worth isn't in what I can provide for other people, that boundaries are necessary, even with family, that love without accountability is meaningless. Heavy lessons, worth learning. 10 years after Costa Rica, I married Riley. We'd fallen in love slowly, built on friendship and trust and mutual respect. My sister was a bridesmaid, not maid of honor. That went to my college roommate who'd been there through everything. But bridesmaid felt right, acknowledged our relationship without overstating it. During her toast, she said something that made me cry. My sister taught me that you can't erase your mistakes, but you can learn from them. That redemption isn't a moment, it's a process. That love means holding people accountable, not letting them off easy. I'm grateful every day that she didn't give up on our family, even when we gave her every reason to. Later that night, as Riley and I danced under string lights, I thought about the girl who'd saved $9,200 for a dream vacation. She'd gotten something better than a perfect trip to Costa Rica. She'd gotten a lesson in self-worth that would shape the rest of her life. She'd learned that her value didn't come from how much she could give or how much she could forgive. It came from knowing what she deserved and refusing to settle for less. She'd learned that family wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about mutual respect and genuine accountability. She'd learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. And she'd learned that healing isn't linear. It's messy and complicated and sometimes takes a decade, but it's possible if everyone involved is willing to do the work. As Riley spun me under the lights, I whispered, "Thank you." For what? For seeing me, for believing me without question, for never asking me to shrink myself to make others comfortable. That's just basic respect. It's rarer than you think. The wedding ended late. We drove to the airport for our honeymoon flight. As we checked in, Riley asked, "Where to?" "Somewhere we've never been. Somewhere with no expectations or history. Just us and possibility." "Costa Rica?" I laughed. "Absolutely not." We ended up in Iceland, watched the northern lights from a geothermal pool, hiked glaciers and explored volcanic landscapes, made memories that belonged only to us. On our last night, as we soaked in a hot spring under the stars, Riley said, "Tell me about the person you were before Costa Rica. Younger, more naive, desperate to prove my worth through what I could give others. And now? Now I know my worth is inherent, not earned through sacrifice or generosity, just there because I'm human and I matter." Took you a decade to learn that? Some lessons take time. We sat in comfortable silence, steam rising around us. "Do you think your sister really changed?" Riley asked. "I think she's trying, some days more successfully than others, but the trying counts for something." "And your parents?" "They showed up differently, made real effort, apologized without making excuses. That's all I can ask." "What about you? Do you think you changed?" I considered it. I became someone who values peace more than being right, who chooses boundaries over bitterness, who can hold space for both hurt and healing. That sounds exhausting. Sometimes it is, but it's better than the alternative. The stars reflected in the water around us, infinite and beautiful and indifferent to human drama. "I'm glad you canceled those flights," Riley said suddenly. "Yeah? It was the first time you chose yourself. Everything good that happened after came from that decision." Riley was right. Canceling those flights had been about more than punishing my sister's lies. It had been about declaring that my sacrifice mattered, that my feelings mattered, that I mattered. Everything else, the therapy, the boundaries, the rebuilt relationships, had flowed from that single act of self-respect. "Best $900 in cancellation fees I ever spent," I said. Riley laughed. "That's one way to look at it." We flew home the next day, back to our life together, back to jobs and responsibilities and the beautiful mundanity of everyday existence. My sister texted a photo of my goddaughter's first steps. I responded with congratulations and a promise to visit soon. Mom called to ask about the honeymoon, actually listened to my stories instead of redirecting to her own news. Dad sent a card welcoming Riley to the family, short and simple and from the heart. Small moments, small gestures, but they added up to something larger. 15 years after Costa Rica, I sat in my sister's living room watching my goddaughter open birthday presents. She was bright and funny, and nothing like either of us at her age. "Auntie," she said, holding up a toy airplane, "can we go on a trip together someday?" My sister tensed, waiting for my response. "Absolutely," I said. "When you're old enough, we'll plan something amazing, just you and me. And Mommy, if Mommy wants to come." My sister relaxed visibly. "I'd love that." Later, as I helped clean up wrapping paper, she said quietly, "Thank you for being in her life, for not punishing her for what I did. She's a kid. This isn't her burden to carry. Still, it means everything." I thought about cycles of hurt and healing, about how easy it would have been to stay bitter, to cut everyone off and never look back. Some people would have said that was the healthy choice. complete separation from toxic family. But health looks different for everyone. For me, it meant carefully rebuilt relationships with clear boundaries. It meant holding people accountable while also holding space for growth. It meant refusing to let my sister's worst moment define her forever. "How's therapy going?" I asked. "Good. I still see Dr. Palmer twice a month. Work through old patterns. Try to be better than yesterday. That's all any of us can do." 20 years after Costa Rica, I received an invitation to my sister's vow renewal. 20 years of marriage to Owen. 20 years of choosing growth over comfort. The ceremony was small, just close family and friends. My goddaughter, now a teenager, read a poem about second chances. During her speech, my sister acknowledged the journey. 20 years ago, I married a man who saw potential in my broken pieces. 10 years before that, I almost destroyed my relationship with my sister through my own insecurity. I'm grateful every day for the people who loved me enough to hold me accountable while still believing I could change. She looked directly at me. "Thank you for not giving up on our family, for showing me what real strength looks like." After the ceremony, my parents pulled me aside. They looked older now, frailer. Time had softened all of us. "We're proud of you," Dad said. "For what?" "For building a good life, for being wise about boundaries, for teaching us what accountability looks like." "I was just surviving." "You were leading," Mom corrected, "whether you meant to or not." That night, dancing with Riley at the reception, I felt the weight of 2 decades of healing. "Still no regrets?" Riley asked, knowing what I was thinking about. "Still no regrets. Not even about the $9,000? Best investment I ever made in myself, because that's what Costa Rica had been. Not a vacation, not a gift, but an investment in learning my worth. And the returns, in self-respect, in healthy boundaries, in authentic relationships, had been worth every penny." The song changed. My goddaughter grabbed my hand. "Dance with me, Auntie." I let her spin me around the dance floor, laughing at her enthusiasm. This moment, this joy, existed because I'd refused to accept less than I deserved, because I'd valued myself enough to cancel those flights, because I'd learned that sometimes love means consequences. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is showing them who you are when you're not sacrificing yourself for their comfort. 25 years after Costa Rica, my sister and I sat on my porch drinking wine, watching the sunset. Our parents were gone now, Dad 5 years earlier, Mom just last spring. Their passings had been peaceful, their final years filled with genuine connection. "Do you ever think about Costa Rica?" my sister asked. "Sometimes. I think about it all the time, the worst version of myself on full display. We were young, stupid, figuring things out. I was cruel. You were scared." She looked at me seriously. "Does it ever stop hurting, knowing I hurt you that badly? Eventually, you stop living in the past. You acknowledge it, learn from it, but you don't let it define you. I wish I'd been different. You became different. That matters more." We sat in silence, comfortable with the space between words. "Riley asked me something once," I said. "Asked if I thought you really changed." "What did you say?" "That you're trying. Some days more successfully than others." Still true 25 years later? Still true. But also, who cares? You're trying. That's enough. My sister's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for not writing me off, for giving me chances to be better. Thank you for taking them." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Costa Rica was beautiful, though," my sister said quietly. "The parts before everything fell apart." "It was. Think you'd ever go back?" "Maybe, with Riley, on our terms. If you do, send me a picture." "I will." 30 years after Costa Rica, I stood in my kitchen making coffee when the memories hit unexpectedly. The resort, the piña coladas, the look on my sister's face when she realized I'd canceled the flights. But this time, instead of anger or hurt, I felt something else. Gratitude for the lesson learned, for the boundary set, for the person I'd become because of it. My phone rang. My goddaughter, now an adult with a career and life of her own. "Morning, Auntie. Got a question for you." "Shoot." "I'm planning a family trip. Got a decent bonus at work. Want to take Mom and Dad somewhere nice. Any advice?" I smiled at the full circle moment. "Yeah, make sure they know you're paying. Make sure they thank you properly. And if anyone tries to diminish your generosity, shut that down immediately." She laughed. "Learned that from experience?" "Something like that." "Thanks, Auntie. Love you." "Love you too." After we hung up, I poured my coffee and sat on the porch where my sister and I had talked 5 years earlier. Riley joined me, settling into the chair next to mine. "What are you thinking about?" "Costa Rica. Ancient history. Important history. Still no regrets?" "Still no regrets." Because 3 decades later, I understood something I couldn't have known at 23. The vacation I'd planned had failed, but the lesson I'd learned had succeeded beyond measure. I'd learned that my worth wasn't in what I could provide, that boundaries were love in action, that accountability and grace could coexist. I'd learned that some people would rise to meet your standards, and some wouldn't, and both outcomes taught you something valuable. I'd learned that the family you build, through intention and respect and genuine care, matters more than the family you're born into. And I'd learned that the best investment you can make is in your own self-respect. Even if it costs $9,200 and a lot of pain. Even if it takes 3 decades to fully appreciate. Even if it means canceling flights and watching relationships break before they can rebuild. Because on the other side of that pain was a life lived on my own terms, with people who valued, in relationships built on honesty rather than obligation, and that was worth every penny. Riley reached over and took my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah, just grateful." "For what?" "For learning the hard lessons young enough to build a good life, for people who showed me what real love looks like, for having the courage to cancel those flights." "Still the best decision you ever made?" I thought about it. About everything that had followed, the pain and healing, the broken relationships rebuilt, the boundaries that had saved me. Top 3 at least. We sat together watching the morning sunrise, coffee cooling in our cups, 30 years of wisdom settling comfortably between us. Somewhere, my sister was probably drinking her own coffee, thinking about her own journey, her own lessons learned, her own redemption earned through years of consistent effort. And my goddaughter was planning a vacation, armed with my hard-won advice about boundaries and self-worth. The cycle had been broken. The lesson had been passed on. Costa Rica hadn't been a failure. It had been the beginning of everything that mattered. And 30 years later, I was finally grateful for all of it. The pain and the healing, the breaking and the rebuilding. All of it had led me here, to this porch, this life, this peace, to a place where I knew my worth and refused to settle for less, where I could hold both hurt and healing, both accountability and grace, where family meant respect, not obligation, and where love meant seeing people clearly, holding them to standards, and believing they could change. That was the real gift of Costa Rica. Not the vacation I'd planned, but the life I'd built from its ashes.
My ex sent me a message thanking me for funding her law degree so her new wealthy boyfriend didn't have to, so I made one phone call that changed everything. Daphne and I met when we were both broke graduate students. I was finishing my engineering degree while working 3 part-time jobs. She wanted to go to law school but had maxed out her student loans. "I'll never make it without help," she said, crying in our tiny apartment. So I helped. I took out personal loans, worked overnight shifts at the warehouse, and sold my car. For 3 years, I put $47,000 toward her tuition while living on ramen and hope. She promised we'd build a life together once she graduated and landed a big firm job. The day she passed the bar exam, she moved out. "I need space to focus on my career," she explained. 2 months later, I saw her Instagram. She was dating Rodrigo, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. Designer clothes, yacht parties, Europe trips, everything I couldn't give her. I didn't contact her. I focused on finishing my degree and landing a job at a tech startup. Life moved on. Then last week, her message appeared. "Thanks for the investment in my education. Rodrigo appreciates not having to cover my student debt. You were always so generous." I stared at those words for an hour. The casual cruelty, the entitlement, the complete dismissal of what I'd sacrificed. I opened my laptop and pulled up my records. Every loan document, every payment receipt, every email where she'd promised we were building our future together. Then I called my friend Wesley, who happens to work in collections law. "Remember that ex I told you about?" I asked. "The one who drained you dry then left?" "Yeah, I need you to look at something." I sent him the documentation. 20 minutes later, he called back, laughing. "You know those personal loans you took out for her tuition? Obviously. They're not gifts. They're recoverable as fraud if you can prove she misrepresented the nature of your relationship to secure funds." My heart started racing. The emails where she promised marriage, called you her future husband, discussed joint finances, that's evidence of fraudulent inducement. You gave money based on promises she never intended to keep. "Can I really do this?" "I already drafted the demand letter," Wesley said. "She owes you $47,000 plus interest, and her fancy law firm won't risk their reputation defending her against this." I sent the letter that night. Daphne called me at 2 a.m., screaming, "You can't do this. That money was a gift." "Funny," I said calmly. "I have emails where you explicitly called it our investment in our future, a future you knew you were abandoning. Rodrigo will pay you back. Just drop this. I don't want his money. I want yours, from your salary, the one you earned with the degree I funded." She hung up. 3 days later, her lawyer called. They wanted to settle quietly. If this went public, it would damage her reputation at the firm. $47,000 plus interest, paid from her accounts, or I file publicly, I said. They agreed, but that's not what made me make a second call. While reviewing the settlement documents, I noticed something strange. The firm representing Daphne was the same firm where she worked. They were covering her legal fees. I called Wesley again. "If her firm is paying her legal defense for personal fraud, isn't that a conflict of interest?" Wesley went quiet. "Forward me everything." An hour later, he called back. "This gets better. If the firm is using company resources for her personal legal issues, that's misuse of partnership funds. And if they're doing it because she's dating a client's son, Rodrigo's father's company must be a client." "Exactly. This is massive ethics violation territory." That's when I realized the phone call I'd made hadn't just changed everything for Daphne. It was about to change everything for Rodrigo's family business too. Wesley worked fast. Within 48 hours, he'd compiled a preliminary report on the connections between Daphne's firm, Montgomery and Associates, and Rodrigo's family pharmaceutical empire, Castellanos Pharmaceuticals. "Sit down for this," Wesley said when he called. "Castellanos Pharmaceuticals has been Montgomery and Associates' largest client for 7 years. They've paid the firm over $12 million in legal fees during that time. So Daphne dating Rodrigo is definitely a conflict. It's worse than that. I pulled public filings. Daphne was assigned to the Castellanos account 3 months after she started at the firm. 2 weeks later, she started dating Rodrigo. I felt my stomach turn. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying it's a hell of a coincidence. Junior associate gets assigned to the firm's biggest client, immediately starts dating the client's heir, and suddenly she's getting promoted faster than anyone in her class. I pulled up Daphne's LinkedIn. Sure enough, she'd made senior associate in just 2 years. Her colleagues from law school were still grinding away at the junior level. "There's more," Wesley continued. "The settlement offer they sent you? It's on Montgomery and Associates letterhead. Billed to a general partnership expense account. That means the firm is paying your settlement. Why would they do that? Because if this goes public, it exposes their relationship with Castellanos. Think about it. If Daphne is romantically involved with a client's family member while working on that client's legal matters, every piece of advice she's given them could be compromised. Every contract she's reviewed. Every deal she's negotiated. They're protecting their cash cow. Exactly. And if I'm right, they're violating about 15 different ethics rules to do it. I stared out my apartment window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Daphne was probably sitting in her expensive condo, thinking she'd gotten away with it, thinking Rodrigo's money would solve all her problems. She had no idea what was coming. What do we do? I asked. We file a complaint with the State Bar Association. We document everything, and we watch the dominoes fall. The complaint took a week to prepare. Wesley was meticulous, cross-referencing every detail against the rules of professional conduct. We documented the timeline of Daphne's relationship with Rodrigo, her assignment to the Castellanos account, her rapid promotions, and the firm's decision to pay her personal legal settlement. This is bulletproof, Wesley said as we reviewed the final draft. The bar will have to investigate. How long does that take? Could be months, could be a year, but once it starts, it doesn't stop. The firm will have to produce records, emails, billing statements. If there's anything else shady going on, they'll find it. I signed the complaint and watched Wesley file it electronically. Done. No going back. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I went to work, came home, lived my life. Part of me wondered if I'd made a mistake, if I was being vindictive, if I should have just taken the money and moved on. Then my phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. Turn on the news, Wesley said. I grabbed my remote and flipped to the local station. The anchor was mid-sentence. Investigation into Montgomery and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms, following allegations of ethics violations and conflicts of interest involving their representation of pharmaceutical giant Castellanos Pharmaceuticals. The screen showed footage of reporters outside the firm's downtown office. The State Bar Association confirmed this evening that they've opened a formal inquiry into the firm's practices after receiving a detailed complaint from an anonymous source. Among the allegations, that a senior associate at the firm engaged in an undisclosed romantic relationship with the son of a major client while providing legal services to that client's company. My hands were shaking. The firm released a statement denying any wrongdoing and stating they are cooperating fully with the investigation. However, sources tell us that Castellanos Pharmaceuticals has already begun reviewing their relationship with Montgomery and Associates and may be considering alternative legal representation. The news cut to commercial. Wesley, I whispered, what did we just do? We exposed the truth. Now let's see what else they've been hiding. The media frenzy lasted 3 days. Every business publication in the city ran stories about the investigation. Legal ethics professors gave interviews about conflicts of interest. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals stock dipped 2% on concerns about their legal exposure. And Daphne went silent. No Instagram posts, no LinkedIn updates, nothing. I found out why when Wesley called me on Monday morning. Daphne's been placed on administrative leave, he said. The firm can't have her working on anything while the investigation is ongoing. It's in their own filing with the bar. Is she getting paid? Probably, but she can't work on any cases. She's radioactive right now. No client would want an associate under investigation touching their files. I thought about Daphne sitting at home, her career suddenly on hold. All those years of law school, all that ambition, stalled because she thought she could use people and walk away clean. Because she thought she could use me and walk away clean. What happens next? I asked. The bar will interview witnesses. They'll want to talk to you eventually, as the complainant. They'll subpoena the firm's records. If they find evidence of ethics violations, they can sanction individual attorneys or even the whole firm. Sanctions like what? Fines, suspensions, in extreme cases, disbarment. And if Montgomery and Associates loses Castellanos as a client over this, we're talking about a financial hit that could destroy the firm. Good, Wesley laughed. You know what's funny? She could have just paid you back quietly. Could have written a check for 50 grand and made this go away. But she had to be arrogant about it. Had to rub your face in her new life. Pride comes before the fall, I said. In this case, pride comes before the complete professional and financial collapse. I'll call you when I hear more. 2 weeks later, the first shoe dropped. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals announced they were conducting an internal review of all legal work performed by Montgomery and Associates over the past 3 years. The press release was carefully worded, but the message was clear. They were looking for a reason to fire the firm. The second shoe dropped 3 days after that. The State Bar expanded their investigation. According to a leak reported by the local legal journal, investigators had found irregularities in how the firm billed Castellanos for work performed by Daphne. They were padding her hours, Wesley explained when he forwarded me the article. Junior associates typically bill 1,800 to 2,000 hours a year. Daphne was billing 2,600. Mathematically impossible unless she was working 18-hour days 7 days a week, which her email metadata proves she wasn't. So they were overbilling the client to justify her salary and her bonuses, and probably her promotions. It's fraud, and it's exactly the kind of thing the bar loves to sink their teeth into. I read the article twice. Near the end, there was a quote from a Montgomery and Associates spokesperson. We are committed to maintaining the highest ethical standards and are cooperating fully with all investigations. Empty words. They were scrambling, and everyone knew it. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. We need to talk, please. D. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her squirm. but I was curious to see if she'd finally understand what she'd done. I texted back, "Coffee, tomorrow, 10 a.m., that place on 5th. Thank you." I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about the last time I'd seen Daphne in person, the day she moved out. She'd looked so confident, so certain about her future, so certain she didn't need me anymore. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived at 9:45 a.m. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, watching people hurry past on their way to work. Daphne walked in at exactly 10 a.m. She looked terrible. Her designer outfit was rumpled, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes, no makeup. She sat down across from me without ordering anything. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. I didn't respond. "Just waited. I know you filed the bar complaint," she continued. "I know this whole thing is because of you." "Prove it," she flinched. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to ask you to stop." "Stop what? Telling the truth? Please," her voice cracked. "My career is over. The firm is going to fire me as soon as the investigation concludes. Rodrigo's father is furious. His lawyers are threatening to sue Montgomery for malpractice. I'm going to be unemployable. Sounds rough. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for the text message. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was cruel, and I was wrong." I took a sip of my coffee. It had gone cold. "Do you know what I did the night you left?" I asked. She shook her head. "I sat in our apartment, my apartment, and I added up all the debt I'd taken on for you, all the shifts I'd worked, all the things I'd sacrificed. And you know what I realized? What? That I'd been an idiot. That I'd given everything to someone who saw me as a stepping stone, as a temporary funding source until something better came along. That's not—" "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't insult me by pretending it wasn't exactly that. You used me. You took my money, my time, my hope for our future, and you traded it all for a guy with a trust fund." Tears started rolling down her face. I felt nothing. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I got caught up in the excitement of graduating, of getting hired at a big firm. Rodrigo paid attention to me and I felt special. I felt like I'd finally made it. And I was just the poor grad student who'd outlived his usefulness. Yes." She looked up at me, mascara smearing. "Yes, and I hate myself for it. I've hated myself every day since. But this investigation, the firm collapsing, losing everything, isn't that enough? Haven't I paid enough?" I leaned back in my chair. "Paid enough? Daphne, you haven't even started paying. That settlement you agreed to? That's just the money. You owe me 3 years of my life. You owe me the car I sold. You owe me the career opportunities I missed because I was too busy working 3 jobs to fund your dreams. You owe me the trust I'll never be able to give anyone else because you broke something fundamental in me. I can't undo the past. No, you can't. But you can face the consequences. That's all this is. Consequences." She wiped her eyes. "Will you drop the complaint? If I pay you back in full with interest, will you make this stop?" I almost laughed. "Daphne, I'm not the one investigating you. The state bar is. The firm's clients are. Rodrigo's father's lawyers are. I just lit the match. The building was always going to burn because it was built on lies and fraud and corruption. So there's nothing I can do? You can tell the truth. Cooperate with the investigation. Take responsibility. Maybe, if you're lucky, you'll only get a suspension instead of disbarment." She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I hope you're happy," she said bitterly. "I hope destroying my life makes you feel better about yours. It's not about feeling better. It's about you finally understanding that actions have consequences. You can't just take and take and take from people and expect them to smile while you walk away." She left without another word. I sat there for a while, finishing my cold coffee. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt vindicated. Mostly, I just felt tired. Wesley called that afternoon. "You'll never believe what just hit the news." "What now?" "Montgomery & Associates is being sued by 3 former clients for malpractice. All 3 cases involve work that Daphne did. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals is leading the charge." That was fast. When you smell blood in the water, you strike. These companies have been looking for reasons to challenge their legal bills for years. Now they have one. And get this. One of the lawsuits alleges that Daphne leaked confidential client information to Rodrigo, who used it to make investment decisions. My stomach dropped. Did she? No idea, but the timing looks suspicious. Rodrigo made some very profitable trades in pharmaceutical stocks right before major announcements that Daphne would have known about through her work. That's insider trading. Yep, and if they can prove it, we're talking federal crimes, SEC investigations, prison time. I set down my phone and walked to my window. Outside, the city continued its endless motion. People working, loving, fighting, surviving. Daphne was out there somewhere, watching her whole world crumble, and I'd made it happen with one phone call. Over the next month, the situation spiraled completely out of control. Montgomery & Associates lost 4 major clients, representing 30% of their annual revenue. 12 associates resigned, flooding the market with their resumes. 2 partners retired early, cashing out their equity before the firm's value cratered further. The State Bar investigation expanded to include the firm's billing practices, client confidentiality procedures, and conflict of interest protocols. They were examining every case Daphne had touched, every hour she'd billed, every email she'd sent. And then the SEC got involved. The federal investigation into potential insider trading focused on 17 stock transactions Rodrigo had made over 2 years. 17 suspiciously timed trades that netted him $3.2 million in profits. Trades that coincided with confidential information Daphne would have accessed through her work. Wesley forwarded me the indictment when it was unsealed. Rodrigo Castellanos was charged with 14 counts of securities fraud. Daphne was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. They're offering her a deal, Wesley explained. If she testifies against Rodrigo and cooperates fully, they won't charge her. But she'd have to admit everything, on the record. Will she take it? She'd be insane not to. Insider trading carries serious prison time. Rodrigo's family has lawyers, but even they can't make this disappear. I thought about Daphne sitting in some prosecutor's office, realizing she had to choose between her boyfriend and her freedom, wondering how her life had gone so wrong so fast, all because she'd sent one smug text message. The news broke on a Friday afternoon. Pharmaceutical heir charged in insider trading scheme dominated every business headline. Rodrigo's arrest photo showed him in an expensive suit, looking bewildered and angry. Daphne's cooperation agreement was leaked by Monday. The legal community erupted in gossip. Junior associates whispered in courthouse hallways. Partners at rival firms sent gloating emails. Montgomery and Associates became a cautionary tale about what happens when ambition overrides ethics. I went to work, came home, lived my normal life, but I couldn't stop reading the news. Couldn't stop following every twist in the story. Wesley noticed. "You doing okay?" he asked when we met for lunch. "Yeah." "Why?" "Because you've been checking your phone every 5 minutes. This thing is eating you up." I set down my phone. "I just want to see how it ends." How it ends is that Daphne loses her law license, Rodrigo goes to prison, Montgomery and Associates probably dissolves, and Castellanos Pharmaceuticals spends the next decade repairing their reputation. You won. It's over. It doesn't feel over. Because revenge never does. It's not like the movies. There's no neat resolution where the bad guy apologizes and you feel complete. Real life is messier than that. I picked at my sandwich. Did I go too far? Wesley leaned back in his chair. You want my honest opinion? Always. She committed fraud. Against you. Against her firm's clients, against federal securities laws. You didn't make her do any of that. You just pulled back the curtain and showed everyone who she really was. If that destroyed her career, that's on her, not you. But I knew it would snowball. I knew the investigation would uncover more than just our situation. So what? You're not responsible for every crime she committed. You're just the guy who finally said enough is enough. Sometimes the right thing to do is uncomfortable. Sometimes being ethical means other people face consequences. That's not your fault. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel like I'd done the right thing. But mostly I just felt hollow. That night, I got another text from Daphne. I'm testifying tomorrow, against Rodrigo. I thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Good luck. Do you hate me? I thought about that question. Did I hate her? Or did I just hate what she represented? The betrayal, the casual cruelty, the assumption that people like me were disposable. No, I just don't think about you anymore. She didn't respond. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I didn't attend, but I followed the coverage obsessively. Daphne testified for 2 full days, walking the jury through every conversation, every leaked detail, every trade Rodrigo had made based on information she'd provided. The defense tried to paint her as a scorned lover seeking revenge, but the paper trail was overwhelming. Emails, text messages, phone records, all of it pointing to a systematic scheme to profit from insider information. Rodrigo was convicted on 12 of 14 counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison and ordered him to forfeit $3.2 million in illegal profits. Daphne received immunity from criminal prosecution, but faced disbarment proceedings. The state bar's final report was damning. Fraudulent billing, conflicts of interest, breach of client confidentiality, conduct unbecoming of an attorney. She was disbarred permanently. No chance of reinstatement. Montgomery and Associates announced their dissolution 3 days after the verdict. The firm that had existed for 47 years, that had represented some of the city's most powerful companies, ceased to exist because they'd prioritized profit over ethics. I read the announcement in my apartment, sitting in the same spot where I'd read Daphne's original text message, the one that started everything. My phone rang. Wesley, it's done, he said. Everything's wrapped up. The settlement money was transferred to your account this morning. $47,000 plus $8,400 in interest. $55,400. I checked my banking app. There it was. More money than I'd had in my account since before I met Daphne. You should celebrate, Wesley continued. You won. Against all odds, against a huge law firm and a pharmaceutical dynasty, you won. I don't feel like I won. Why not? Because winning was supposed to feel better than this. Wesley was quiet for a moment. You want to know what I think? Tell me. I think you're not celebrating because deep down you never wanted revenge. You wanted justice, and justice isn't satisfying like revenge is. Justice is just right. It's the way things should be, even when it's complicated and messy and doesn't make you feel like a hero. I'm not a hero. No, you're just a guy who refused to be a victim, who said enough when everyone else would have swallowed their pride and moved on. That's not nothing. After we hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. About the phone call that changed everything. About Daphne's career in ruins, Rodrigo in prison, an entire law firm destroyed. About whether any of it had been worth it. My phone buzzed. Another text from Daphne. I know you don't think about me anymore, but I think about you every day. About the person I was, and the person I became. You were right about everything. I'm sorry I had to lose everything to understand that. I hope someday you can forgive me. I read the message 3 times, then I deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late. Some damage is too deep to repair. And sometimes the only closure you get is knowing that justice was served, even if it doesn't make the pain go away. I transferred the settlement money into a high-yield savings account and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to missed calls from Wesley. "Turn on the news," his voicemail said. "You need to see this." I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the local news website. The headline made my blood run cold. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals CEO arrested in connection with son's insider trading scheme. According to the article, federal prosecutors had expanded their investigation. While building the case against Rodrigo, they'd uncovered evidence that his father, Mateo Castellanos, had known about the illegal trading and had actively encouraged it. More than that, he'd used his position as CEO to manipulate drug approval timelines and clinical trial results to make Rodrigo's trades more profitable. The SEC and the Department of Justice were now investigating Castellanos Pharmaceuticals for securities fraud, manipulation of clinical trials, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. I called Wesley immediately. "Did you know about this?" "Not until this morning, but it makes sense. Where do you think Rodrigo learned to cut corners and break rules? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." I read through the article again. Mateo Castellanos was being held without bail. Federal agents had raided Castellanos Pharmaceuticals headquarters, seizing computers and files. The company's stock had dropped 42% in pre-market trading. "This is bigger than I thought," I said. "It always was. You just didn't know it yet." Daphne's testimony didn't just put Rodrigo away, it gave prosecutors a window into the whole operation. And once they started looking, they found a whole lot more than insider trading. Over the next week, the full scope of the Castellanos family's corruption came to light. Mateo had been manipulating FDA approval processes through bribery and political connections. He'd falsified clinical trial data to get medications approved faster. He'd suppressed evidence of dangerous side effects that had led to patient deaths. The Department of Justice brought RICO charges, racketeering influenced corrupt organization, the kind of charge usually reserved for organized crime families. Because that's what Castellanos Pharmaceuticals was, a family business built on corruption, fraud, and a complete disregard for human life. Daphne's cooperation had opened a door, and federal prosecutors had walked through it into a nightmare of regulatory violations and corporate crime. The fallout was staggering. Castellanos Pharmaceuticals filed for bankruptcy. 15 executives were indicted. 3 FDA officials resigned amid corruption investigations. Class action lawsuits were filed by families of patients who died from drugs that should never have been approved. And I'd started it all because my ex-girlfriend sent a smug text message. I met Wesley for coffee 3 weeks after Mateo's arrest. "You look terrible," he said when I sat down. "I can't sleep. Every night I think about those patients who died, those families who lost people because of drugs that Castellanos pushed through. If I hadn't filed that complaint, would any of this have come out?" Wesley stirred his coffee slowly. "Maybe, maybe not. But here's what I know. You didn't create the corruption. You didn't bribe FDA officials or falsify clinical trials. You didn't do anything except stand up for yourself when someone wronged you. The fact that standing up for yourself exposed a massive criminal enterprise, that's not your fault. People died, Wesley. People died because Mateo Castellanos valued profit over human life, because he built a company on fraud and corruption. You didn't kill those people, he did, and now he's facing justice for it. But if I'd just let it go, then he'd still be out there, falsifying data, bribing officials, killing people for money. Is that better? Is letting criminals operate in the shadows because you feel guilty about exposing them really the moral high ground you want to stand on?" I didn't have an answer. "Listen," Wesley continued, "I've been doing this work for 15 years. I've seen a lot of bad people get away with a lot of bad things because good people decided it wasn't worth the fight, because they didn't want to make waves, because they were afraid of the consequences. You made waves. You fought. And yeah, the consequences were bigger than anyone expected. But that doesn't make you responsible for other people's crimes. I just wanted my money back, and you got it. Everything else? That's just the universe balancing the scales. Sometimes when you shine a light on one cockroach, you discover the whole kitchen is infested. That's not your fault. That's just truth coming to light. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel like I'd done the right thing. But the weight of it all, the destroyed careers, the prison sentences, the patients who died years ago because of drugs that should never have been approved, it was crushing me. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went through my old emails with Daphne, the ones from when we were happy, when we were planning our future together. Reading them hurt worse than I expected. There was the email where she thanked me for believing in her when nobody else did. The one where she promised we'd travel the world together once she made partner. The one where she said I was the best thing that ever happened to her. Had she meant any of it? Or was I always just a convenient funding source? I'd never know. And maybe that was the hardest part. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Is this the man who filed the complaint against Montgomery and Associates?" A woman's voice, shaking slightly. "Who is this?" "My name is Claudia Martinez. My husband died 3 years ago from a drug manufactured by Castellanos Pharmaceuticals, a drug that never should have been approved. I wanted to thank you." I sat down hard. "Thank me? For exposing them. For starting the investigation that showed what they really were. My husband trusted that medication because the FDA approved it. He trusted the system, and it killed him because someone manipulated that system for profit. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know you didn't do it for us. I know you were just trying to get your money back from your ex-girlfriend. But what you did, it's going to help so many families get justice. The class action lawsuit, the criminal charges. None of that happens without your complaint starting this whole chain of events. I didn't know what to say. Thank you, she continued, her voice breaking. Thank you for not letting them get away with it. Thank you for being brave enough to fight back, even when you didn't know what it would uncover. My husband's death finally means something now. Finally, someone's being held accountable. We talked for 20 more minutes. She told me about her husband, about the medication that was supposed to help his heart condition but instead caused the stroke that killed him, about the 3 kids he left behind, about the years she'd spent trying to get answers, only to be dismissed by Castellanos' lawyers. When we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Maybe Wesley was right. Maybe I wasn't responsible for other people's crimes. Maybe all I'd done was pull on one thread, and the whole rotten tapestry had unraveled because it was built on lies. Over the next month, I heard from 7 more families. People who'd lost loved ones to Castellanos Pharmaceuticals' fraudulent drugs. People who'd been following the investigation, who'd tracked down my name through court records and news articles. They all said the same thing. Thank you. Thank you for exposing the truth. Thank you for not letting them hide behind their money and power. Thank you for being the domino that started the chain reaction that brought them down. I started a file. Photos they sent me of their lost family members. Letters detailing what had happened. Stories of pain and loss and justice delayed. And slowly, the guilt started to transform into something else. Not quite pride. I'd never be proud of destroying someone's career, even if that someone was Daphne. But maybe acceptance. Understanding that sometimes doing the right thing has consequences you can't predict. That sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for people you've never met. 6 months after my initial phone call to Wesley, I attended a town hall meeting organized by the families affected by Castellanos Pharmaceuticals fraud. Over 200 people packed into a community center. Parents who'd lost children, children who'd lost parents, spouses, siblings, friends, all united by grief and the desire for justice. A woman named Teresa stood at the podium, reading the names of 63 people who died because of falsified clinical trials. 63 lives cut short because someone decided profit mattered more than safety. When she finished, the room was silent, except for quiet crying. Then she looked directly at me. Several people had recognized me, and word had spread that I was there. I want to thank the person who started all of this, Teresa said. The person who refused to be a victim, who said enough when it would have been easier to stay quiet. This investigation, these charges, this justice, it started with one person standing up for themselves, and that courage rippled out to help all of us. The room erupted in applause. I sat frozen in my seat, tears streaming down my face. I hadn't meant to become a hero. I just wanted my money back. I just wanted Daphne to understand that she couldn't use people and walk away without consequences. But sometimes justice works in mysterious ways. Sometimes one person's refusal to be silenced echoes louder than anyone expects. After the meeting, dozens of people came up to shake my hand, to hug me, to thank me. I listened to their stories, looked at photos of their loved ones, shared in their grief and their hope for accountability. An elderly man gripped my hand with surprising strength. My granddaughter was 8 years old, he said. The medication was supposed to help with her seizures. Instead, it caused a brain hemorrhage. She died 3 days before her 9th birthday. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be proud. What you did, standing up to power, refusing to let them win. That's what heroes do. You saved lives by stopping them. All the people who won't die now, because Castellanos Pharmaceuticals can't push through dangerous drugs anymore. That's your legacy. I'd never thought about it that way. I'd been so focused on the destruction, on the careers ended and the prison sentences handed down, that I hadn't considered the lives saved, the medications that wouldn't be falsely approved, the clinical trials that would be honest, the FDA officials who'd think twice before accepting bribes, the pharmaceutical executives who'd remember what happened to the Castellanos family and choose ethics over profit. Driving home that night, I finally felt something like peace. I'd made that first phone call to Wesley in anger, in pain, in a desperate need for validation that I wasn't just someone to be used and discarded. And yes, it had destroyed Daphne's career. It had sent Rodrigo to prison. It had brought down an entire pharmaceutical empire. But it had also exposed corruption that had killed dozens and endangered thousands. It had started an investigation that would prevent future deaths. It had shown that power and money couldn't protect you if someone was brave enough to shine a light on your crimes. I'd never wanted to be a whistleblower. I'd never intended to take down a Fortune 500 company. I just wanted my $47,000 back. But life had other plans. A year after that first phone call, I received a letter in the mail. Official letterhead from the Department of Justice. Inside was a check for $125,000. The letter explained that under the False Claims Act, I was entitled to a percentage of the recovered funds from the Castellanos Pharmaceutical settlement. The federal government had recovered over $400 million in fines, penalties, and restitution. My share, as the person whose complaint initiated the investigation, was this check. I stared at it in disbelief. All I'd wanted was my $47,000. Now I had nearly 3 times that amount, plus the original settlement from Daphne. Wesley called me that afternoon. Did you get it? Yeah. I don't know what to do with it. I have a suggestion. There's a foundation being set up by the families affected by Castellanos Pharmaceuticals. They're working on drug safety advocacy, supporting families who lost loved ones to pharmaceutical fraud, funding research into better FDA oversight. They could use a major donor. I didn't hesitate. Set it up. All of it. Every penny from the DOJ settlement. I want it to go there. You sure? That's a lot of money. I'm sure. This money came from pain and loss and corruption. The only way it means anything is if it goes toward preventing that from happening to other families. 3 days later, I wrote the check. $125,000 to the Castellanos Pharmaceutical Victims Foundation. At the donation ceremony, I met more families, heard more stories, saw photos of children, parents, grandparents, all gone because someone prioritized profit over safety. And I understood finally why all of this had happened. Not for revenge, not for money, but because sometimes the universe pushes you to do something larger than yourself. Sometimes your personal pain becomes the catalyst for broader justice. I kept the original $47,000 settlement from Daphne. That was mine. That was the debt she owed me. The concrete acknowledgement that what she'd done was wrong. But the rest? The rest belonged to something bigger. 2 years after that first phone call, I sat in a coffee shop, not the one where I'd met Daphne for the last time, somewhere new, and read the newspaper. Mateo Castellanos had been sentenced to 23 years in federal prison. Rodrigo was serving his 6-year sentence. Daphne had moved to another state, working as a paralegal under her maiden name. Her law career permanently over. Montgomery & Associates was gone, dissolved completely. Several of its former partners had been disbarred. Others had retired in disgrace. The FDA had implemented new oversight procedures to prevent the kind of bribery and manipulation that Castellanos had engaged in. 3 new patient safety laws had been passed. Pharmaceutical companies faced stricter penalties for clinical trial fraud. And all of it traced back to one phone call. One decision to fight back instead of accepting being used. My phone buzzed. A text from Wesley. Coffee next week? I have something to run by you. Sure. What's up? A potential case. Woman got scammed by her business partner, wondering if you'd be willing to consult. You've got a talent for spotting fraud and corruption. I smiled. Maybe this was my purpose now. Not engineering, not the tech startup job I'd been working for the past 2 years, but this, helping people who'd been used, manipulated, taken advantage of, helping them fight back, helping them find justice. Send me the details, I texted back. Because here's what I'd learned. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And sometimes when you stand up for yourself, you end up standing up for people you've never met. You end up being the catalyst for change you never intended to create. Daphne had thought she could use me and walk away clean.